Wife was flirting with a co-worker. She said she'd stopped, but it happened again. Does this relationship have a future? About 3 years have passed since my wife and I were united in marriage. Last Christmas, I learned that she had been engaged in a long chat with a colleague in which they mentioned having several times, and now they couldn't wait for the next one to get around to them. The guy informed them that he intended to reserve a hotel near their place of business immediately after Christmas. When he expressed excitement about meeting my wife, she would answer with phrases such as "I'm looking forward to much more than simply seeing you," and similar expressions. You see where I'm going with this? Excessively flirty, immature. When I approached my wife about the discussion, she flatly denied having had it. In order to establish that the phone didn't exist, she showed me her phone after it had been erased. However, I had snapped a few of shots. She went on to assert that everything was virtual, and that they had never done anything in the real world. To demonstrate her point, she sent a text message to her colleague who was standing in front of me, and inquired as to whether he had reserved a hotel room, to which he responded not yet. She then inquired as to whether he was certain that they would meet, to which he responded in the negative. She vowed that they would never talk to one another again, and I agreed because I loved her and wanted to put my faith in her. But I wasn't totally confident that she had spoken the truth. As a result of my excessive checking of her phones, over the course of a few weeks, she changed her password, which I did mind, since I was probably being unnecessarily worried. My mother's cell phone was in my possession this week. Since I needed code that had been given to her phone number, I didn't even have to unlock the screen to get it. Contrary to expectations, there were other communications from the same individual. Below the message with the code and audio file, a shirtless snapshot of himself in front of the mirror, and a message that stated "sweaty," and a few time emojis were among the messages. Because she had previously said that they would not speak again, I challenged her, and she explained that he only wanted to demonstrate his commitment to her by coming to the gym and showing improvement. However, the bulk of the time they converse, they are discussing work. And this is just by chance. I begged her to show me the remainder of their texts, but she refused, claiming that she had accidentally destroyed their whole chat history. According to my wife, she was going to change this time, and that I never completely forgiven her, which is why she continued to speak with the man. This time around, she claims she'll be different, but I'm not sure I trust her. But even if she does stop, unconcerned that she'll do it again. If things between us aren't going so well, I admire, but I can't continue to live my life in this manner. Is there any scenario in which this would be appropriate? What do you think your response would be? Update? After reading every single remark on the Reddit article, my brain was unable to deal with the tragedy and collapse of the universe I had made for myself, in which my wife is my love, best friend and partner, as well as the person I most respect. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She was perfect. And she brought me a lot of joy throughout the years. I was certain that there was no other couple on the planet that could have what we had. We were both ecstatic for a long period of time. We had a lot in common. We were both gorgeous, innately kind, had enormous hearts, and had achieved tremendous success in our respective fields. Following the Reddit post, I relocated to an errand, then subsequently to my family's home to give me some time to reflect. It was a dreadful time. But a psychologist supported me in regaining my mental health after a period of depression. Moreover, it occurred at the same time that the pandemic struck my city hard. I contracted the virus, which did not assist the situation. My wife sincerely apologized and explained that they had not met throughout this time period. As we continued to converse, I knew it wasn't real. But I was prepared to forgive the lady of my dreams, who remained at the center of my universe, his most sacred temple. Then there was the day before last when I came to our apartment, prepared to forgive her, and resolve the situation in the most adult way imaginable. Than this she was. But I was the one who was caught back, to put it mildly, by her appearance. My wife and a gentleman were both completely nude in my home. The man in the texts, the one of the images, they're all the same guy. She stated she didn't even care for it at the time. Meanwhile, my wife was getting dressed in the bathroom. He was speaking about in the corner. In my restroom, he apologized and said, "Sorry, buddy, when I spotted him hidden, there is this little occasion where I'm going to murder him." I pondered for a short second. Nevertheless, I quickly answered, I have nothing against you, since the guy was over heels in love with this beautiful lady, even if he was doing it in a home that was littered with my photographs from our wedding, as well as our family's gatherings, images of my departed father, who would be saddened to watch the dissolution of a marriage that he never saw take place. He has been the driving force behind my attempts to make the world a better place. From the beginning of my career. He went away a little over 2 months before our wedding. Please accept my apologies, I still think the world of her and cherish her to the moon and back. However, I come to the conclusion that enough is enough. In the event that my world comes crashing down, I want to be able to establish a new one that isn't built on falsehoods, and in which I'm not just a blind believer worshipping a fake deity. Godspeed. Story number 2, the second cheating retaliation story. Though less painful than the previous one, this breakup occurred approximately 2 years half of the previous one. The guy I was dating was much more out of the closet than I was. And it was fun to be with him. It just so happened that he was the older brother of my best friend at the time. My friend would often keep to himself when we were together. And I'm not sure what it was about him that drew me to him. But there was something about him that I liked. It all started with me just chatting with him while my friends were getting ready to go somewhere. Being able to make him smile was enough for me at first, but eventually, I was able to persuade him to join us when we were hanging out as a group of friends. The two of us were clearly getting closer, and almost all of my friends, especially my best friend, were pushing for the two of us to get together. I was beginning to feel the same way. I asked him out on a date around Halloween. And to my surprise, he accepted. For the first year I felt so a lot just being in his company, whether it was going on dates or simply lounging around his house watching a movie. I love being in his company. The situation had gotten so bad that I was practically living at my best friend's house, because I hadn't told my parents about my relationship and didn't want to have to explain to my father why I was 17 years old and had a 19-year-old boyfriend. That the family was supportive of us, making me feel as if I were a member of the family, was extremely beneficial. His confidence in himself and his ability to form his own group of friends were the catalyst for the shift in his circumstances. You respected them because they were a little older than him, and he wanted to impress them. So it began to alter his personality in order to do so. When it first started with small things like making slight jabs at me when my friends were around. But it quickly progressed to him simply doing whatever he wanted whenever he wanted. He became increasingly insistent that I told my parents, so that I wouldn't be lounging around his house all of the time. I eventually agreed. In the end, he went above and beyond, lying about what he was doing, canceling plans with me, and lying to my friends about why I couldn't attend events that he was planning for them. This behavior bothered me, so I tried to ignore it and pretended that what was going on didn't bother me. The point came where he became irritated when I went to my best friend's house to hang out. While he went to his older buddy's house to hang out with us, the only time I'd ever heard him referred to us as a couple was when he made lewd remarks about our love life or our relationship. When my best friend and 2 of our other friends came over for a sleepover, we ended up staying up until the early hours of the morning, fueling ourselves with energy drinks and soda. It was great to be able to spend time with my friends again. And they appeared to agree with me. Our strange conversation about some show or another had just reached the halfway point when my boyfriend arrived at our house. Because the walls in the house were thin, I could hear that he wasn't alone, and the rest of the group fell silent. All of us curious about what was going on. My stomach dropped when they walked into the next room and heard the unmistakable sounds of him and another guy having a good time. The rest of my friends were taken aback and attempted to console me. Despite the fact that I was feeling both depressed and enraged at the time. I knew that storming into the room would only provide him with the satisfaction of witnessing my pain. My friends attempted to divert my attention with a variety of distractions, but they were unable to drown out the obvious sounds of my boyfriend and whoever he happened to be with at the time. Even though I pretended that I couldn't hear it. Because I didn't want my drama to ruin the group sleepover with each sound that could be heard to the walls. My sadness turned to rage. After my friends fell asleep, I remained wide awake in the silence of the room. The sounds of the room still audible to my ears. When the noises stopped, I turned around to see my boyfriend's friend, who was shirtless and disheveled, making his way to the front door through the open door, which I immediately closed. Simply put, I did not sleep that night and woke up the next morning still feeling very angry about what had happened. It was necessary for my boyfriend to get up early in the morning because he was traveling out of state to visit a college he was interested in attending. My husband had just awoken and I was in the kitchen, sipping some hot tea. He stumbled into the kitchen half naked and smelling of cheap cologne to cover up the stench of the kitchen. He was typing on one of my old shirts, which I had given him as a birthday present, and pretended to be fixing his hair while I was watching. "Did you stay up all night again?" Bay says the narrator. The question came out of his mouth in a sleepy, unfamiliar tone. He was aware that I had a habit of not sleeping at times and occasionally losing track of time, so he didn't make any assumptions about my whereabouts. When I looked up, he was smiling at me as he always did, which made me even angrier because I knew he thought I had noticed him. "Could you please make me a cup of tea? I need to get back on the road as soon as possible." To get the tea packets, I simply stood up and walked around the bar area where they were waiting for me in the kitchen area. I sat there watching the tea kettle boil and considered hurling the boiling water at him, but decided against it. When the whistle began to blow, I poured hot water into his mug and reached for the lemon juice he liked to put in his tea every morning as soon as it started. My attention was drawn to the lemon-flavored laxative in the refrigerator at that point. In place of lemon juice, I poured a generous amount of liquid laxative into his cup after making his tea according to the directions on the package, reading the instructions of course, not wanting to kill him. I also used one of those over-the-counter stimulants to help me get going. It had been a prank gift from his father for his last birthday, and it ever seemed to leave its spot on the kitchen countertop. Prior to returning the cup to him and watching him sort the contents, I vigorously stirred the mixture. He looked at the clock, noting that he needed to get on the road before the traffic, and then drew me into a kiss on the lips, trying to taste the lips of another man. As he walked out the front door made me feel sick. I stood there for an hour watching him walk away before leaving him a voicemail letting him know it was all over with. I later told my best friend about what I'd done, and we've continued to have a good laugh about it ever since. Upon returning home, my now ex-husband was incensed because he claimed to have accidentally soiled himself in traffic, and that every time he had to stop for gas, his erection would fall into the car's trunk. My feelings were hurt, but I also thought it was amusing in a strange way. The next time I come to visit, my ex still gives me dirty looks and becomes jealous whenever I and my best friend are talking about other guys as he did before. Last but not least, while I'm disappointed with how things turned out, I believe that you must learn from your mistakes and grow as a result of that.